Hello, everyone. This is Nicholas Hall, founder of Graham's Foundation, and we are here today with Preemie mom Emily Rosen. And Emily is about to be an author. She's shared a bit about her experience with her son Max in the neonatal intensive care unit. She's joining us from Los Angeles, California. Um, I used to live out there in the LA County. So, Emily, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing your story. So the title of the book is Waiting for Max, a NICU story, right?
hmm
Um,
Yes.
so Obviously we're going to get into what prompted, what inspired um, going through the process of writing the book. But before that, I'd like to, if you wouldn't mind, maybe sharing a bit about your experience in the neonatal intensive care unit in your journey, so our preemie parent community can have a better idea of kind of what the situation what it was like for you.
Yes, of course. So in 2019, I was pregnant with my first kid, um, Max, and he was due on June 25th. But on May 15th, when I was 34 weeks, my water broke unexpectedly one morning. And my husband and I rushed to the hospital and kind of got admitted. And the nurse was like, "You're not leaving without, having that baby." And obviously, it was very scared and didn't
Yeah,
know why it happened or what was going to happen. A NICU doctor came in and explained that Max would spend time in the NICU due to how early he was. And it was just a lot of information all at once. And it's obviously scary as any person who's given birth prematurely can attest to.
yeah,
Really, anyone who's given birth, but especially prematurely. And so they gave me a couple shots of steroids to try to help his lungs develop. Wanted to keep him in for 48 hours, but after 20 hours, he was ready to come out. His heart rate had kind of dropped a couple times in that labor, and it got scary. And
yeah.
so it was time for him to come out. And so he arrived on May 16th, just before 5 a.m. And he was able to be on my chest for maybe 30 seconds and then kind of rushed away to the NICU where my husband followed, while I recovered. And it was really scary, not being able to really hold him for more than a
Yeah.
few seconds and unsure of what was going to happen next. But he ended up staying there for 16 days. We were lucky in that he mostly just needed to learn to eat and grow in that time. And, he had a feeding tube for a lot of that time.
Hmm.
And we had one setback where he developed SVT, which is a heart condition where his heart rates just increased a lot all of a sudden, a few times. So that was pretty scary. And just waiting for him to come home, as any NICU parent can attest to, whether it's one day in the NICU or several months, it was just really, really difficult. I cried every day, and it was just so
Yeah,
hard leaving the hospital without him and seeing other parents leave with their babies who had full term healthy babies. Um, but after 16 days, we were able to bring him home, and it was, obviously wonderful, but that the journey doesn't end there. But it was quite a an experience that has really stayed with me. It's now been 6 years, and it's definitely
yeah.
been something that I still think about and still
Mm.
feel.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Emily. I had an experience shortly after I had started Graham's Foundation. I was talking to a mom in New York, and she was sharing about her experience with her son that was born prematurely, and was sharing how, again, a lot of the same types of feelings that you were sharing, how it was, the most profound experience of her life, and how grateful she was for the doctors and nurses. Um, and honestly, I was expecting her to share after I said, "So, how long were you in the neonatal intensive care unit?" I was expecting, based on what she had shared, that she had to have been there for at least a couple of months, if
Mhm.
not longer. And she shared that she was there for 7 days.
Yeah,
And it actually um, it really has it had an impact on me, obviously, still to this day, um, because I do think there is a tendency to have the feelings like you had of seeing other parents taking their baby home. You might see other parents where their baby is having a much more difficult course,
yeah,
and um, you might feel bad about feeling grateful that your baby isn't going through that. So it's a real mix of emotions, and it's not necessarily uh, to measure it purely in how many days that you're there. Um, you know, you don't have to spend years. I've never been to war, fortunately, but I'm sure spending, a month in combat, a week, a day, would impact you forever. And a lot of
definitely.
parents share of how PTSD is real. A lot of parents share that they're impacted by it, and it may not be at that time because you sort of go into that kind of fight or flight type, and you really kind of just like, we're gonna get through this, and then things can just unravel at a out of nowhere, but it's just all that emotion that you're carrying.
Definitely. Yeah, I think what you said is totally true. There's so many feelings that they can all be true at the same time, which is hard
Right.
to grapple with and to like accept every feeling you're having. And I didn't have a therapist at the time, but 4 months postpartum, I started seeing a therapist because I had postpartum anxiety, and I think probably due to the traumatic experience of the NICU,
Yeah.
definitely contributed to that. And my therapist is also a NICU mom, so she really understood exactly what I was feeling. And that those feelings still come back. I mean, when I went to visit the NICU where Max was born, because I had the medical director there review the book, and he took me into the NICU, and I hadn't been since the day Max was
Mm.
discharged in 2019, and all the feelings definitely came flooding back.
Yeah.
Just seeing that space and seeing the isolates and everything, and it's something that I didn't realize at the time, like, would stick with me years later. I mean, I imagine for the rest of my life, feel something about that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been almost 19 years since my twins were born, but
Mhm.
I can have a conversation, with a parent today, and I can go right back to what that experience was like, where, the emotions that we went through, the journey. Um, yeah, I've said, I think parents that have a, a neonatal intensive care unit experience should have to opt out of having some sort of therapy, not have to opt in, um,
Mhm.
even if it's just one appointment, but just to be
Right.
able to like have someone besides yourself go, okay, I think you're okay, or you've you've understand your experience, and you're at a place to be able to move forward healthfully, because um, yeah, the doctors and nurses, appropriately so, they're really more focused on, of course, the patient, which is the baby.
Right.
But we, as the parents, we are the ones that feel a lot of what they're going through, and we have then our own emotions of how this might impact us and our future as well. I will put a plug in
Definitely.
for our mentor program. While of course they're not therapists, and they make that really clear, um, having the ability to just talk to someone else. You mentioned your therapist is went through the NICU as well. Having a someone that can listen, but also can empathize. Can appreciate, while your every journey is unique. There's that's a pretty profound shared experience. So tell me, let's talk a little bit about what inspired what inspired the book? And is this in I didn't you mentioned you work from home, so I don't know if is writing a book sort of a natural, well, of course this is what I would do because of your your vocation or your background. So I'm curious about that as well.
Yeah, I can address that first. So my career has been as a copywriter and creative director in advertising. So I worked most of it full time at ad agencies here in LA,
Yeah,
working for big clients like Google. I worked with the Obama White House, with the band Depeche Mode. Um, and then I went freelance a few years ago and continued working with ad agencies, but also worked directly with brands as well as startups, on everything from naming and establishing a tone of voice for a company to big kind of 360-degree ad campaigns. So yeah, I've always been a writer, and growing up, I wrote plays and I worked on the school newspaper. And I always had this dream of like becoming a children's book writer, even before I had children.
yeah,
I always loved picture books. And so when this experience happened with Max in the NICU, one thing we could do that felt like somewhat a normal new parent thing to do, because it doesn't feel like the beginning of your parenthood that you would expect,
right.
is we brought a book every day to read to him. We got a lot of gifts of books.
Yeah,
And so each day we would bring a different one to read to him, while we did skin to skin or while he was in the isolette. Um, and it really like helped me through that experience. And I know that's also really encouraged for the baby's development. Um, but for us as parents, it was also really comforting to have that
yeah,
kind of one normal parent thing to do. And
absolutely.
so I was kind of always trying to find books that reflected our story. And, there are a few out there, but there's not a lot, and there should be more given 1 in 10 babies go to the NICU in the US, as you know,
Yeah,
over 350,000 a year in our country alone. And so I really wanted to like write a story that reflected that.
yeah,
And I took a online children's book class and kind of learned a bit more about how to develop the story and the characters. And the idea that kept rising to the top was took me back to the NICU and writing about that experience and a family that went through what we went through. Um, because that wait, as you and every NICU parent knows, that wait for your baby to come home is so difficult, no matter how long the stay is. And so I wrote this book to kind of reflect those feelings, but from the perspective of an older sibling of a NICU baby. Um, and I actually have it here. I can show you the,
okay.
yeah. It's out October
uh
21st, but I have a couple copies early.
it's
Um,
beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, you could definitely I would definitely say a book was inside of you. It was just
Yeah,
it was just what was gonna, where was gonna be the moment of inspiration or the idea for the story. Where was it gonna come from? And obviously came from waiting for Max. Yeah.
exactly. And I really wanted to write a story that like reflected my experience, but obviously knowing that no NICU journey is no two NICU journeys are the same. They're different lengths, different things come up for each individual baby. So obviously I
Yeah.
can't cover everything in one book, especially a picture book. But I wanted, especially for the kids that are in these babies' lives, the older siblings, the older cousins, the next door neighbor kids that, are so excited for this new baby, but don't understand why they're not coming home
Yeah.
right away, like the other babies they know in their lives. And so this is for them to help explain elements of the NICU and also as a way to really like validate what they're feeling and
Mm.
give them, ways to cope and think about it, as well as a conversation starter with any grown up in their life. So, it can be hard when you're going through something so difficult like the NICU with one baby. How do you talk about that with your other child or your niece or
Right.
nephew? A book can be a really great tool for that. And so, my hope is that parents, grandparents, librarians, teachers can use my book as a tool to start that conversation with a kid that's involved in a NICU baby's life.
Wonderful. What were some of the in the development of the book? Were there any spots that were particular challenges, or where, I mean, because you're doing it in pictures, and obviously if it's for children, it's going to be fewer words is better.
Right.
So yeah, so I'm just kind of curious if there were some challenges or some places maybe you you would have liked to have addressed, but you just knew it was too much for this particular book.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a delicate balance of being medically accurate, but also, being kid friendly. I think it's really important. I kind of have this philosophy with my own kids that it's important to tell kids the truth and empower them with knowledge, but you don't at the same time need to tell them every detail. Like you don't want to scare them too if something big like the NICU is going on. And so that was kind of like something I worked on throughout writing and the editing process. My editor is also a NICU mom, which really helped. So she understood everything about the book
Yeah.
and who it was for. And just trying to balance that, like with the illustrations too. I really wanted to find an illustrator that could accurately depict, the monitors and the isolate and everything in the NICU, but do so in a way that feels warm and friendly and not scary for any kid that's looking at it. And I think she did an amazing job with that. I can show you a couple of illustrations. Um, so like this is the first picture that Louise, the older sister, sees of her brother in the NICU. And
Yeah.
so it has the cords and the monitors and everything, but it like the colors and the amount of detail I think really make it
Yeah.
feel
I mean,
warm.
yeah, it's nice that because the equipment is muted, it's like mostly black and white or grayscale, I guess you'd say. It's sort of, it's there, but it puts it in the background. And really
Yeah,
what's focused is the hands and the baby, and so
exactly.
that's where your eye that's where your eye is focused. Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing that was important to me that reflects my actual experience was when Max was in the NICU, I really wanted a piece of him at home. It was just so hard to come home every night and he not
Mm.
be here. And so I remember several of the nights that he was there afterwards, there was a CVS a few blocks away, and we would stop there and use their like anytime kind of photo printer, and just take pictures from our phones and print them and put them up in frames in our house. And
Oh,
so
wow.
when I was working on the book and kind of giving ideas to the illustrator, I really wanted some of the photos to be printed photos, even though nowadays I know most people just look at pictures on their phone.
Right.
Um, but in my house, I print photos all the time. I have a million picture frames. And so I thought that was like a really nice personal element to include. And then another thing was, like I said, I wanted to be medically accurate. So I went and spoke to the medical director of the NICU where Max was born, as I mentioned, and he reviewed the book and made sure every cord was in the right place and going to the right monitor. And so it's all as it should be, but in a kid-friendly manner.
Yeah. No, that's be nothing worse than a NICU parent going, that
Yeah, exactly. I definitely didn't want that. So I'm glad he took the time to look at it.
what was the I'm curious, how long from like idea to completion? How long did that take?
So I first started writing in 2021, and now we're 2025, so 4 years. My original manuscript, I actually wrote from the perspective of a NICU baby, um, and kind of thinking about it and talking to some people in the publishing space and the NICU space. It was clear that like the book was for siblings and older cousins and other kids that needed help. Obviously, this book I hope is read to babies while they're in the NICU, but the kids that are really going to be impacted by it in the moment while that baby's in the NICU are the other kids in that baby's life. And so I re-examined the story and wrote it from this older sister's perspective, and it became so much stronger and really heartfelt. And I sent it out. The publishing process and getting a book published by a publisher is long and difficult, as any author will tell you.
Yeah.
I was really grateful that the Collective Book Studio, which is an independent book publisher in Northern California, saw something in this book and that it was a story that needed to be told and wasn't being told enough in the
Yeah.
market. And so that I remember getting their email back last July. So from that moment to now, it'll be like almost a year and a half between like speaking to them for the first time and publishing it, which I think is pretty standard. And then the book, um, Collective Book Studio works with Simon and Schuster as their distributor, so they get the books everywhere from Amazon and Barnes and Noble to your local independent
Yeah.
bookstores.
No, that's fantastic. And I think, but it helps to I think it's helpful to understand just the patience that's required in that.
Yeah, a lot of patience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I know you had shared a little bit that you've got you're hoping to have like a pay it forward type of model with the book. So I'm just kind of curious if you could share more about that, what you're thinking.
Yeah, so part of my efforts with the book, obviously, I hope the story itself resonates and helps a lot of people just reading it with their families and sharing it. But I really want to help NICU families going forward as well. So I plan to donate books to hospitals around the country to have it in their NICU library so that families that are there can read it to their NICU baby or to their other child or niece or nephew at home. Um, and then I also want to donate some of the proceeds of the book to NICU organizations like yours, and NICU hospitals, as well, to kind of continue the efforts of
Mhm.
supporting families. And I've already spoken to several hospitals that love the book and want to have it for their families, as well as NICU organizations like yours and others that are helping families in so many ways and have sibling care kits they want this book in. And so I'm really excited to kind of get the book out there, to help, both with the physical book donations and, the money that
Yeah.
comes from uh, publishing and selling the book.
Well, we keep a database of all the NICUs in the United States, so we can happy to talk to you about helping you with that effort.
Oh,
Um,
thank you. That would be great.
yeah, share with me. So Max was born in 2019. That would make
Yep.
him about, I think, and he was born. So I think he's that, he's actually got the same birth date as my dad. So
Oh, May 16th.
yeah. So
Nice.
so he's 6 years old.
Yeah,
And what's he up to?
he actually just started kindergarten, and he's really excited about it. I picked him up after the first day, and he said, "I loved everything." So
That's
he's
a
doing really
that's a good
well.
response. That's
Yeah, he's a really like social, like loving kid. He's so excited, like when he makes new friends or discovers new books or new toys and wants to learn. And he's just a wonderful kid, and he's really excited about the book. It's dedicated to him. And
yeah.
when I got the printed proof, it was actually the day before his birthday, May 15th, and I was going into his class the next day to celebrate his birthday, and you can read a
Yeah.
book to the class. And he was like, "Mama, read this book." And so I read it to his class. His preschool class was the first kids besides my own kids that got to hear it, which was
Oh,
really wonderful. And they all
perfect.
really liked it and had good questions and understood it. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, he's thriving, and yeah, he's the best kid. And I'm just very grateful for him.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, that's
Thank
wonderful to
you.
hear. If our listeners want to find out more about you and about the book, um, again, depending on when they ultimately hear our conversation, will the book is officially available October 21st, 2025. I know that you said they can pre-order it now, but if they want to just find out more about you and the book, where should they? I'm sure there's a place in the digital universe that they can go
Yeah, there's
to.
a few places. So the book, yeah, is available for pre-order or order, depending on when you watch this, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any of your favorite independent local bookstores. You can get it online and hopefully in store as well. And then in terms of learning more about my story and me, I'm on Instagram as Emily Rosen Creative. And my website is the same. It's emilyrosencreative.com. So you can learn more about me there, and see, more info on the book and the reviews it's been getting and the press. And yeah, I'd love to see people who love Grimm's Foundation,
Yeah,
reading the book and
wonderful.
helping out.
I've got one last question.
Sure.
So, do you imagine that this is the first and only book, or do you see? Are you sort of addicted to the children's books and see yourself continuing to explore the genre?
Yeah, great question. So before I even got the book deal for this, I saw this as a series, a waiting for series. And it would be all books of older siblings waiting for their baby sibling to come home in, less traditional ways. Obviously, there's tons of new sibling books, new babies coming home from the hospitals.
Yeah.
But I want to cover some topics that aren't covered as much. So I have my son Max, who's 6, but I also have a daughter who was born in October of last year. And after a long fertility journey,
Mm.
which could be related to why Max was born early as well, we welcomed her with the help of a wonderful surrogate. And there's not a lot of books out there about babies coming via surrogacy and fertility journeys. So I would definitely love to do a book dedicated to my daughter, kind of
Mm.
exploring that. Max was waiting for a sibling. He really wanted one, and he's
Yeah.
the best big brother. And then looking at other journeys, whether it's adoption. I have an adopted niece, or other ways that babies kind of get home to their families that isn't the traditional way, but is really beautiful, and
Of
I want to
course.
share it and have that for all the families out
Yeah.
there.
I think if you add up all the quote non-traditional, it's what we think of as non-traditional is probably more traditional than we realize. And so,
Definitely.
right.
Yeah. So that's
So
my
the,
plan.
so the answer is yes.
Yes, the short answer is yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Emily, thanks for spending time with us today. Thanks for sharing about your story. Obviously, all the best of luck with your book, Waiting for Max, a NICU story, and hopefully we will be able to continue to collaborate and support your efforts.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time. It was great talking to you.